Good. So I was first introduced to Shawn because we have a mutual friend, and Shawn's one of these kind of guys that's always asking questions, and so for some reason he had a bunch of questions, and he wanted someone who kind of been around the block a few times to answer them, and so we kind of connected in Atlanta and had lunch at a really crazy place, if I remember correctly, and
we won't talk about that.
We won't talk about that, but yeah, that's exactly what it was, and I got to really, what I really appreciated about Shawn is his passion for change. And there's very few people that have a passion for change because change is hard. Change is hard. Change is expensive. Change slows things down. And most companies don't like change. Well, his whole life is change. So first of all, I'd like you to kind of introduce yourself, talk a little about yourself, and then what the heck was the 8-foot beanbag chair?
All right.
Where'd that come from?
Cool, yeah. So I'm Shawn. I founded this business, Lovesac, many, many years ago while I was in college. In fact, I'm 10 days out of high school, 18 years old, and I was sitting on the couch watching The Price is Right, eating a bowl of Captain Crunch at 10 a.m. or whatever. And I just had this idea pop in my head. How funny would that be to have a beanbag, like a huge, probably the world's biggest beanbag, right? Big enough to fill the space on the floor between me and the TV. And I'm very impulsive and kind of weird, so I got off the couch, drove down to the fabric store right then, bought 14 yards of vinyl, pleather, because that's what you make beanbags out of, and brought it home and looked at a baseball and cut out 2 figure-8s and started sewing it and ruined my mom's sewing machine. So, my girlfriend's mom sewed it up and put a zipper in it, and before you know it, it actually took me 3 weeks to stuff it. At first it was, beanbag beads, but I couldn't buy enough of them, this thing was so massive. And so I was just looking around for soft stuff. I found the old blankets. I found those camping mattresses that are, in your closet, the bungee cord around. And I chopped those up on a paper cutter in strips, then in squares, and then that was awesome. So I chopped up everything I could find, 3 weeks of putting all kinds of crap in there, but the foam was the best. And that made it, instead of like a beanbag that are kind of crunchy and hard, it made it just like a giant pillow. And by giant, I mean it would fill the back of a pickup truck. We'd take it camping, we'd take it to the drive-in movies, back, all kinds of weird stuff. And everywhere we took it, everyone's like, oh my gosh, that thing's so cool. I said, I'd never make another one. It was terrible. It took me it was 3 years later that a friend finally convinced me to make them one. And then it just became kind of a side hustle while I was going to college, and I was a waiter, because for 3 or 4 years, I never made any money. It was just it was a pain in the butt. It was like this little business that, we'd sell a few, we'd make a few bucks, then we'd have to buy more fabric or fix the van or whatever. And it was just a terrible experience. But you couldn't stop because people loved these things. And meanwhile, I'm paying my way through school as a waiter at night. And so it was a very long, protracted journey. Today, just to give you both ends of the spectrum, Lovesac is a formidable business. We have 65 Lovesac stores in malls all over the country, from Maine to Los Angeles. We have we're mostly a web business. We've invented the only internetable couch on the planet that I think is going to be a massive disruptor in furniture. It's a couch that can ship to your door in a box, but very elegant, and can also change with your life and grow and last forever because of that. And I think, so this new generation of Lovesac is very different than what I ever imagined when I first, got off the couch and made this beanbag. But it's been a very long, intense, difficult, but fun journey. So it's been like my whole adult life, really. Mm-hmm. I've been building this.
There's a couple points along the way where, didn't you enter a contest?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that kind of helped you a little bit, just a little bit?
Yeah, so in 2005, I won a reality TV show on Fox called The Rebel Billionaire. And this was Richard Branson, founder of Virgin Airlines, Virgin Virgin brands. He wanted to have a show to rival Donald Trump's The Apprentice. And so rather than apprentices, he found weird entrepreneurs like me to go and compete, 11 different countries all over the world, each episode will leave someone behind on the tarmac while Virgin Airlines takes us to the next destination. Anyway, land in Africa. You have 48 hours to come up with an economic recovery plan for this village as a team. And then we're going to jump off a cliff together tied to a rope because I'm Richard Branson. And then, anyway, somehow, after all of these strange adventures, I won. And I was invited to be on this thing randomly. You guys kind of recruited to be on the show. That I had to leave my company for 2 months, no contact by phone, nothing. Had to leave it with my team and just like go on faith. And but it turned out pretty great. I won $1 million investment from Branson. I was made president of Virgin Worldwide for a minute and traveled the world working with him. Anyway, so it's been a weird ride, but it's been fun.
But you transitioned from 8-foot beanbags to a business model that completely changed from what you did when you first started thinking about in 1995, 96, 97.
Yeah.
So what got you going in that direction?
Yeah, so in the very first Lovesac, so what happened is we made this thing, people loved it, we were just selling them in college. At the end of my college run, it was time to get a real job. And this little business, Lovesac, had never really made any money. It was just sort of break even. I'm still a waiter. And I was going to close it down. And all my friends said, like, no, you can't close. I love my Lovesac. Like, who had a Lovesac out there? Yeah, I heard someone, right? Yeah, like, all right. Do you love your Lovesac? Right? Like, do people love your, like, it's funny. It's this weird product that makes people smile, And so I said, fine, we'll give it one last shot. We went to this, we credit carded our way to Chicago to this trade show to show our product to more companies. Because Red Bull Energy Drink had bought 50 Lovesacs from us recently, back then. To use at their events and stuff. We were like, oh, 50 at a time, that's much better, So we showed it, and anyway, came back from the show, nobody bought anything. None of these companies we showed it to bought, Lovesacs. But my phone rang a couple weeks later, and I was literally down in our little handmade factory. It's kind of like a wood chipper plugged into the wall, shredding foam out of the back room of this furniture company that let us use it because they thought we were funny. And my phone rings, and it's an out-of-state number, so I figured maybe it's from the show. So Lovesac Corporation. And it turns out it's a limited company, and they wanted to order 12,000 little Lovesacs. So, no, sight unseen. So, anyway, they FedExed me this piece of fabric, and they said, it's got to be here in 5 months. I said, no problem. We're the best not beanbag company in the world. I took the order, ended up flying to China to source this fabric. It's a whole other story. There's a lot of funny things that happen along the way. You should check out the long history at lovesac.com if you want to hear the whole story, because there's not time today. But anyway, when I came back, I built a factory on credit cards. I ended up 24 years old, $55,000 in credit card debt, having built a factory using a hay shredder financed by the U.S. federal government for farm equipment, because it's the only piece of equipment I could afford that was big enough to shred tons of foam.
Didn't you have to put on the loading dock upside down or something?
I had to buy a tractor to power the hay shredder. So I connected this tractor to a hay shredder with a drive. Anyways, it was insanity. But we did it, and we finished this $250,000 order, which got us started. But we made no money. We broke even again.
Didn't you have to convince them to kind of pay you ahead of time?
Yeah.
Because you can, a person of 25 years old didn't have $250,000.
Yeah, so I'm kind of skipping through it. But so I get over to China because they wanted it out of this purple fuzzy fabric with little silver specks in it. And I first went to North Carolina to find this fabric they wanted at the biggest fabric show in the country, which happened to be there, And I walk like I know what I'm doing. I find this fabric, and it's $5 a yard. I said, no, I need it for half that. And the guy says, well, I'm a direct importer. You're not going to find any cheaper. But I'm looking around, and he's got all these fabric boxes with Chinese writing on them behind him in his little booth at this trade show. And it's in Chinese, and I skipped over this, but I speak Chinese. So I took 2 years out of my life to go serve a mission for my church. I'm Mormon, and I learned Mandarin Chinese in Taiwan. And I can read these boxes, and it's the address of the fabric mill that makes this fabric. So I get on a plane, I credit card my way to China, I walk in the fabric mill, in English, because I'd never negotiated like that. I said, hi, I'm Shawn, I'm here for the Limit 2. I need 30,000 yards of this fabric. They said, no problem, we make that. It's $5 a yard. I said, no, I need it for half that. And they start talking in Chinese in front of me about how much it costs to make this fabric.
You understand everything.
Oh, yeah. And so I knew that they could do it, right? And so finally, I negotiate for 3 days. They say, okay, we'll cut them, we'll sew them, we'll ship them to you. You need to go home and stuff them. I said, great. They said, we just need a $65,000 deposit to get started. I said, And bear in mind, I'm still a waiter. I hadn't quit my waiting job yet. I'm literally on my last month of school. And I'm over in China, and I'm like, what am I even doing here? But I call up the Limited 2. I said, hi, I'm Shawn. I'm here for Limited 2. I'm here at my factory. I need $65,000 deposit to get started. And they said, well, we don't give deposits. We're the Limited. I said, well, I've never done a deal without a deposit. I'm Lovesac. And they said, anyway, they wire me $65,000 to my University of Utah credit union account. This is all happening. That's the only account I had for this little college business that I had. And it was embarrassing. But anyway, I spent their money. Then I was committed. Then I built this factory on credit cards. And long story short, I wrapped up in this. You asked me the question, how did I get to couches? We finished this order. We, again, made no money, kind of broke even. But now I had a factory, a bunch of people who wanted to work, a hay shredder, and I could make a lot of Lovesacks. So I scrambled at the very end to go find more clients. I went to the big furniture stores out west, R.C. Willey and the giant furniture chains that are around. I said, look how cool, we make these not beanbag things. The covers come off. You can shrink them down to 1/8 the original size. You can ship them. And they said, look, no one wants a beanbag that big. Your name's stupid. It's too expensive. So my cousin said, well, let's open our own retail store. And I said, well, that's crazy and expensive. And he said, no, I've been doing retail a long time. Like, we can do this. So we maxed out his credit cards, bought the neon sign and the carpet and the paint, and opened a Lovesac store in Salt Lake City in 2001 in a mall that originally rejected us, because we went to the mall and they said, well, we have Pottery Barn and Crate and Barrel and The Gap, like, what's Lovesac? But they called me back and said, okay, we've got a few stores open for holiday. We'll let you in just to fill this space. And they'll do that on a temp lease. Yeah. We'll, kind of a pop-up shop. We said, great, we'll take it. We did this right. And after building out the store, we had a couch in the corner. So the very long answer to your short question is, in the first Lovesac store, there was a couch there and a big screen TV playing movies. And we opened our doors just hoping not to be laughed at, because no one had ever seen a giant, not beanbag store. And people, sure enough, would come in, flop down, because we'd make them, and they just loved it. And they started buying Lovesacks, and it worked, right? Like 6 weeks in, we'd done $120,000 in sales, full retail. We'd never seen money like that, right? I'm paying myself finally, first time I'd ever paid myself to work in this, but 4 years into it, I'm paying myself $5 an hour to work in the mall from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m.
That's what a college degree will get you, right?
But all of a sudden, we could afford to open the next store with the cash in the drawer. And so it just started going. But right from that first store, people would sometimes ask, well, how much is that couch? And I said, I don't know. It's just there to be pretty. And they said, no, I really like that. But I couldn't deal with it because this store was tiny. Mm-hmm. And it had a little tiny back room the size of a bathroom and shrunken down Lovesacks because we suck all the air out of them. And I thought, man, if only I could shrink down that couch like I shrink down my Lovesacks, I'd really have something. So that's what we did. We spent the next 3 years of our lives inventing a couch that shrinks down, not the same way, but it's very unique. It sounds kind of IKEA but it's actually really, really nice, kind of Pottery Barn price level couch. It can grow with you, change with you. You can arrange it, rearrange it. We have 4 patents issued on it. It took us many years to perfect that product, many more years to then transition this beanbag company to become a home deck company, your mom would shop at and buy a $4,000 couch from. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've become today. And so we have a very broad consumer base on young people buying Lovesacks and starting out with a couple of pieces of these Sactionals, they're called. We sell $10,000 couches in leather all the time, and we're in, celebrities from Jamie Foxx to I don't know, tons of celebrities now own our product, and it's become a big thing, and it's becoming viral, and the company's grown to roughly about 100 million in sales, just to give you guys a benchmark of what can happen over time. And so it's been a very long story arc, but that's how I got into couches.
Well, no, that's retail. That's it's funny because we talk about it all the time. I always get a chance to speak with a lot of people, especially those who started businesses, and tell me what your business plan was the day you started, and tell me how that compares to the business plan you have today. And I don't care. In 99.9% of the companies, the business plan has evolved to something that the customer took them to. Yeah. It has nothing to do with what you thought it was going to sell. It's how the customer took it to. So the customer took them to a couch that wouldn't even, had nothing to do with the business.
But unless we had, like I say, and that's the name of my vlog. So I do these online videos like almost every day. I did one today. It's on YouTube. It's called Get Off the Couch. because that's my whole ethos, right? Unless I had gotten off the couch and just made this silly, massive, not beanbag, I would never have invented sack. None of this that I just explained would have ever happened. And so I don't think it's so much about having the best idea, because I can't say that a really big beanbag was a great idea. But I think it's about taking action and then listening, and listening to those customers that are saying they want to buy this couch. And it's completely transformed my business. And by the way, we still sell Love Sacks, and that business is growing, but Sactionals will dominate. Sactionals will disrupt furniture. If you've seen what like Casper or Purple or Tuft & Needle, what's happening in the mattress industry, we will do the same thing to couches. And
you basically have two, maybe three SKUs, right? 3 items?
Yeah, Sactionals are special because it's just 2 things, a seat and a side, and I can't describe it to you sitting up here, but with these 2 products, you can build any couch you can imagine. And so it's a very efficient product. It ships very efficiently. It's very eco-friendly in many ways. And we have a whole sustainability design ethos that if we have time, I'll speak to. But all of this and the richness that's behind this product and what it's going to become, even when we invented Sactionals, was not our intention. We just wanted a couch that we could fit in our back room. And then lo and behold, the internet became a really big thing. And what we effectively did by accident was invent the greatest couch for the internet. And now we've pivoted our entire business model. We don't even have stores anymore. We have showrooms. And the purpose of a showroom, like if you listen to my speech or go maybe check out this video on Instagram or something and say, man, that's a cool couch. It can do all this cool stuff and change, and you can change the fabric forever and own this thing for the rest of my life. I could buy 2 pieces in my 20s, and those same 2 pieces might be a giant wraparound sectional when I've got 3 kids someday, right? Like, once you understand that, though, you're skeptical. Man, I'd love to go sit on it. In Tucson, we don't have anything, but you might find your way, on a long weekend over in Phoenix and to go check out the Love Sack store. And we have a couple there. And the purpose is just to allow you to sit. But that was not how we came up. We did not come up with this showroom e-tailing model that we've pivoted the whole business into, to where now store managers are not even store managers. They're area managers. They get compensated on all the sales that happen in their area. It doesn't matter if it happens online or in their store. And now they're not motivated to try and be pushy salespeople and get you to close today. It's like, I don't care whether you buy it. They just want you to love the product. And so you could go home and buy on your iPad. But so you have to be so flexible and so open to change. And I think in the end, it'll make us look really smart. But the truth is we've just been surviving and doing the next thing, Well,
it's interesting. I've known John, and I've been kind of following him for a while. And the stories are, he's not even telling you half of who would use a hail baler to shred foam, that you got a loan from the government because it's, agricultural. Yeah, that's pretty smart. That kind of works for me. But the idea is, how do you survive? Because the first 5 or 6 or 7 years was fun but survival, and then there's a point in time where you said the survival is worth it. When did that happen?
Oh, God. It is still just survival. And it's funny how glamorous it can seem looking at these entrepreneurs sitting up here in this chair and like, oh, my gosh, they've made it or they're doing it. And, 2 million or 10 million or even 100 million. It sounds like so much money. It sounds like so unfathomable when you're just starting out. But even at the size we're at, we're nothing. Like in furniture, we're nothing. And my point is, I am, 24/7 on it, grinding it today. Because it's still a struggle. But, I think your question is, how do you survive? So one of my Shawnisms I like to, speak to on my vlog or whatever, I'm always talking about this crazy entrepreneur stuff, is embracing economic pressure. See, when I called The Limited and I said, hey, I'm over here, my factory's ready to go, I need $65,000 to get started, and I convinced them to wire me $65,000, I had now spent $65,000 of one of the biggest retailers in the country's money, right? Like, what happens if I don't deliver, Gordy?
Yep.
What happens?
It's pretty ugly.
Right?
Yeah.
They crush me.
That's right.
Lawsuit. Like, who knows what happens?
Yeah.
My point is, I had no choice at that point. I didn't even own a factory. You got to understand, I had a wood chipper plugged into a wall and a friend named Dave. And I'm a waiter. And I had just wired their money to my China factory, and I had to go figure out how to build a factory that could pump out 12,000 little Love Sacks in basically the space of 60 days. I had to stuff them all with foam. And so, and I knew I figure it out. I mean, I believed I could figure it out. And but and so, I think that there's always this talk about risk and like, I don't know, like, my parents said they'd loan me some money, or, like, what do I do? I mean, it may not, right or wrong, it's what I believe. You embrace economic pressure. Like, if you have an entrepreneurial spirit and you want to do something, then you have to be willing to embrace that economic pressure. And by the way, nothing will drive creativity like farm equipment powered foam shredding, like economic pressure. And so the willingness to just embrace it and say, like, yeah, man, we have to do this. And sure enough, we did it, right? Through no genius of my own. And there were a lot of other steps along that way, but that's a big one,
Well, it's interesting, too, because besides, embrace economic pressure, it's also how do you have the courage to do it? I mean, there's a point in time where you can say, wow, this can ruin my life. Am I willing to make that jump? And I'm probably sure you had 3 or 4 of those right up front. It's fun when you're a waiter and a college student, you're making beanbags for buddies.
Yeah.
But
there's not a lot of downside.
all of a sudden you got orders from Limited that you're saying, boy, am I going to leap? And is that leap take not only a craziness about me as a person, but is that courage piece?
Yeah, I remember there was a day when I had like this FedEx packet with like all the stuff from the order in my hand, and I dropped it on. Dave was over at his apartment sleeping on the ground. I walked over there and I dropped it on his chest. I said, "Look, man, you can do it if you want, but I've decided not to." I rejected it. I mean, I walked away from it because it was just too big. We didn't have the money. We didn't know how we were going to buy the fabric. We didn't know how we were going to source it. All these things that I described. We had no way to do it yet. And then somehow we kept going back and forth, and we obviously, and the truth is, even when I was standing there in North Carolina and the guy said it's $5 a yard and it was too expensive for me to hit their price they wanted, even at that moment I was like, what am I even doing? I don't know how I'm going to buy 30,000 yards of fabric. But then when I saw the Chinese, I was like, oh crap, I can't quit now, right? I can't quit now. So I got on the plane, credit card my way, and so it's like at each one of those steps, there was always this moment where I was on the verge of just like walking away, and then there was always sort of that next little bit of light that showed me the path ahead. And so I think you got to have a willingness, and if it's just not in you, it's not in you. But I think if it is, I think I will tell you this: there is nothing on this earth that has been done, and think of all the technology that surrounds us. Think of all the amazing things that are going on. Everything you see was made real by people. And I've been around a lot of billionaires and millionaires now, and I have yet to meet many people that I would say are just somehow savant geniuses. I mean, you don't know, Gordy's background's incredible. I mean, he would run hundreds of billions in merchandise. Am I wrong?
Close, yeah.
And I mean, he's, and I know Gordy well enough. He's a motorcycle guy. He's a normal guy, but like he, one step along the way in his career. And the truth is, there is nothing that cannot be done. And figuring out how you can stuff 12,000 love sacks in 2 months, one way or another, that can be done, or whatever it might be. And so I think you just have to be willing enough to take confidence in the fact that all those things are possible if you're willing to just keep pushing.
Was the adventure kind of what drove you? Was it the like, wow, no one could do that? Or maybe, why am I doing this? But boy, this is a lot of fun. Maybe we'll figure it out. It has to be a little bit of a, I can climb that wall, but you're halfway up the wall, you go, wow, that's pretty dangerous. I can either fall or I can finish climbing the wall.
Yeah, there's kind of no way out, right? Like, and I think that's why I'm a big fan of embracing economic pressure. That's why I'm a big fan of just doing things like get off the couch, go make that be. Like, you have an idea. I meet entrepreneurs, would-be entrepreneurs every day. After these things like this will come up to me. Oh, I've had this idea, but I don't know. I'd have to quit my job, or I'd have to. And that's fine, by the way. Not everyone should do it, but somehow, if you feel like you have it in you to do it, then just take that step. I say, go do something. Go make that beanbag. It may sound like a stupid idea. But you never know where it can lead, and it is fun, but it's also scary, and and it can be very depressing and lonely and scary along the way. But when you have no choice but to, like you say, just keep climbing the wall, it's pretty motivating.
Well, you have to have it sounds like you have a few crazy friends.
I do.
Are they still in the business with you today?
So I've had a number of friends, and people ask about this all the time, like, Do I get a friend?
Where's
partner?
Dave? Where's Dave?
Dave is my head of product development. He
He's
stuck
still
it
with you.
out.
Yeah.
And I had 2 or 3 other college friends that were my partners and co-founders that have long since gone by the wayside. Almost all friendly, and there's been a little bit of, difficulty with at least one of them. And that's something that, you'll face into as you charge into entrepreneurship. And there's no right way to do any of this stuff, man. Who should be your first partner? Where should you get your first money? Wherever you can.
Mm-hmm. Because you've been through multiple different, I wouldn't say partners, but as you raise money to drive your business, the business is so big you can't kind of fund it yourself with credit cards anymore.
Yeah, so we've raised everything from early government-backed agricultural loans for farm equipment to a loan from my parents to buy that last forklift, because we had the factory all built on my credit cards and whatnot, but I couldn't afford a forklift, so they loaned me $8,000 with interest, and I paid it back, to venture capital funding that came in along with that reality TV show, to private equity, which backs us today, to the tens of millions that we've raised, many tens of millions that we've raised to grow this thing along the way. If you can build something that has momentum at every stage, here's something that because I didn't grow up around finance. Here's one of the crazy lessons I learned along the way. There is so much money out there. There are so many people with so much money that would love to see their money grow. They are looking for places they are looking for people like you to give it to if you can grow it. Because their money otherwise sits in the bank and makes no interest. I know that sounds like a dumb concept, a dumb way to put it, but I never understood that. I grew up mowing lawns and being a waiter or whatever. And it blew my mind when I realized that people are they want to give me their money. They want, if I can have a model that can prove, or at least prove on paper that I can make their money grow, they're desperately wanting to give it to me. And it's at every stage, from the raw startup seed stage to when you get into the hundreds of millions. And that concept may sound like a simple concept to many of you business students, but to me that blew my mind. And it's out there and it's available to you, but what you have to have is you have to prove. What you can't do is you can't just have the napkin. You have to do something. You have to prove something. And you have to take some risk yourself.
Well, look out 5 years. I know you do that. Sure. I know you kind of like, what's next? And is it sectionals? Is it going to be something else? Where's your head at? And where you number one, what are you worried about? And then what are you really excited about?
Yeah, so I get challenged every day. I have 65 mall-based stores, and we're opening more, lots more. We have some of the highest sales per square foot in all of retail. 5 years out, I believe we will be second only to Apple in terms of productivity, sales per square foot. That's what I believe. Because it's really simple. I sell big things out of tiny little stores, right? They're 1,000 square feet, and because we can sit here, you and I, and play with these little blocks we have in our stores that are Sactionals and pick some fabrics. And as long as you can sit your butt in Sactionals and admit, like, yeah, these are pretty good, I can sell you 10,000 couches right here at this coffee table, right? And so that's a really cool model. And it's a really cool model to support an e-commerce product that can ship anywhere in the world in small boxes. So, 5 years out, Lovesac will be in the hundreds of millions, I think worth more than $1 billion, I believe. I think that what I fear is the shakeup in retail that's happening, and it's real. And here we have, students that are majoring
in retail.
Yeah. I really liked what Scott had to say. I think I get challenged with that every time. From business people, investors. I heard malls are dying. Malls will die, many of them, and I fear that the most. I think that you got to understand, when shopping centers that large that are many tens of billions to construct, or more than that, and the worst of them probably will need to go away or get repurposed. Big funds and whatnot go down with those, like the Pension Teachers Fund of Canada or whatever built that mall. And so that worries me for the larger economy. In terms of my business, I'm not worried because we built a business that can be good enough to only go in the best centers, which I know will not die. But there's going to be huge change in retail. I think stores in general are going to get way smaller, And I think this model that I just described to you, this tiny model where we can do lots of business out of a small space, is not just, we happen to be at the head of that curve because we got lucky. We invented a product that literally gets smaller. But I think that that's where retail will go. I think just the physical space is not necessary anymore. I think something is, but it's smaller. Obviously, e-commerce takes the place of so much of what used to be giant vacuous browsing facilities. And I think the world's got to buckle up for that change and that tumult. But retail as an industry is not going anywhere. It will just change.
Well, we got about 10 minutes to ask Shawn any questions that he might have. And so if you could, I think we have one mic over here. Is that correct? Is there 2 mics
Two
now?
mics.
There's 2 now? Well, there they are. Yes, I can see you. This is a wonderful opportunity to talk to somebody that's kind of, I would say, been in the battle for 15 years.
Yeah.
And I think it's amazing to be able to build a product that nobody has and have the courage to. There's no way in the world I would have gone to the limit and asked for $65,000. Are you kidding me? You know, I've been thinking about, God, where my kid's going to go to school? Am I going to lose my house? You know, and I think that's quite a courageous thing. So, any questions for Shawn? Great.
So my question is about how you came up with your business. When you were younger and like still growing, was it your dream or your passion to own a business, or did that more happen simultaneously as you grew and discovered what happened? And if it wasn't your dream, when did you realize that that was your future?
Great question. Yeah, I mean, growing up, now that I look back, you know, I'm sure I had an entrepreneurial bone. I was picking cherries in the summer and selling coolers, you know, $200 worth of cherries when I was 10 years old. Like, that was a lot of, you know, that was, and I look back at some of these behaviors that I just kind of did. I don't even think I asked permission. I just sort of did these things. But I don't think, the funny thing is, you know, I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. My father was self-employed of sorts. He was in real estate, but, you know, I kind of just fell into it, and I fought it for a long time. Like, even as I was building that factory that I described in Salt Lake City to do that order, I was taking job interviews because that was my last semester of school. I was putting on a suit, being flown around to go interview for real jobs, because this thing over here was just like, I mean, it was crazy and it was hard, but I didn't really believe it would actually become something, you know? And so I think I fought it and even after that, like, I fought it for a very long time that it was going to become like a real business. And it didn't. I didn't pay myself for a long time, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
great question.
Yeah.
Could you speak to some of the challenges you had from flipping from the brick and mortar model to your now e-tailing model?
Yeah, I mean, so we're still in the midst of that pivot. I think one of the most interesting challenges that businesses like mine face at the more mature level is we got lucky enough, frankly, that we didn't explode as a business 3 years ago, because I'd probably have 200 or 300 or 400 stores, and like so many chains that you're seeing now, if you watch the headlines, a lot of these guys are going to go down because they're being dragged down by too expensive, too many leases in malls where the traffic is shrinking, right? And so a big one of the toughest challenges for me is to not only change my business, like I said, I had to change my whole payment structure for the people that are running my stores so that they are motivated to get your information and help you close online while you're at home. Do you know what I mean? And that's a new behavior that they didn't learn because they're just working in a store, right? And so they have to get your phone number and they have to reach out to you and they have, you know, or do it through the internet. And so there's so much in the guts of the business that we are small enough as a business to still change, that I think a lot of the bigger retailers are gonna, even though they have lots and lots of money, their systems are so ingrained and there's just their size and their retail leases are so large, they're gonna have a hard time making that pivot.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Whitney. I just had to say real quick, U of U, go.
A Utes fan.
Yes.
Yep.
All right, University of Utah, that's where we got started.
But my question was, did you throughout your battle, did you ever have a mentor that you relied on no matter what to help you through it?
Great question. So actually, I'll speak to that really honestly. One of my, and because you guys, many of you in this room are at a stage where you have a chance to get ahead of this. I think one of my biggest weaknesses as an entrepreneur, as a business person, whatever, is that I've always been too self-reliant, you know? Like, I kind of wanted to do things on my own, I don't know, like, I didn't reach out for help enough. In fact, I've been pushing myself for the last time I met Gordy. I've really been pushing myself to expand my network, adopt mentors like Gordy, but it takes an effort. You have to be humble, you have to be teachable, you have to be willing to make the effort to network. I know that sounds like a dumb thing. And I'm not a natural like room worker, you know, like I don't go to these things and like, hey, I just want to meet everyone here. Like some people are like that. And I really admire that. And you know the people that know everybody. And I was never like that. And so I have to push myself to be like that. So the answer is no. And I wish that's probably the best piece of advice I can give you is there are so many people willing to help you. You'd be shocked. Like I get people that email me that I don't even know, and I'll take the time to answer their question or have lunch with them. I know you will. Mm-hmm. And there's so many people out there that will help you if you're willing to reach out, but it's not going to find you. You have to really chase that down, and it is incredibly valuable. I could have saved myself years and years and millions of dollars in mistakes if I would have been more network driven.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I don't know if you already are, but internationally wise, how do you attract the customers that are in like America versus the people that are globally with the same type of furniture?
Great question. So we have not expanded globally, except for that we have our patents and trademarks filed all over the world. So Sactionals are patented, and that's been a huge advantage for us, and we have that all over the world. And we probably still won't go international for another couple of years. In fact, I think unless there's a unique opportunity, like Mike had a unique opportunity going to Japan because an investor found them, and I think that's a really cool example. But, you know, it's so tempting in any business, and this is another sort of just a piece of advice I'll give, is to do more. Oh, man, we had this great shirt business. Now let's do pants. Oh, man, we had this great shoe business, now, you know, or we had this great beanbag business. And for a minute, even at Lovesac, we were doing rugs and lamps and baskets and bowls and home decor and all this stuff because we could. We had stores, and we pared back. And if you think about it this way, what's the biggest company in the world, right? What's one of the most successful companies in the whole world? How many products does Apple sell? If you really think about it, how many like not different models, how many products?
Like 10 different kinds.
Probably like 3, like laptops, or 10. You know what I mean? But my point is,
they just came out with the
but my
X,
point is, Samsung makes like refrigerators and earth movers,
Yeah.
right? And you could say, well, Samsung sells more phones, and you're right. Apple has 90% of the profits in cell phones. Samsung sells more. Apple accounts for 90% of the profitability in cell phones. If I could go into an Apple store right now, and on the wall of merchandise, how much of that stuff is even theirs? You've got Logitech, you've got stuff that comes from other brands. Meanwhile, Apple could take the interest on the money, on the cash that they have, and purchase all those companies. But do they do that? They just focus. And so it sounds boring, but at Lovesac, what I'm going to be doing for the next few years is just telling the world about Sactionals, because most of you in this room probably never heard of it. Mm-hmm. And everyone always asks me, well, what's next? And my answer is, if I'm being a really good business person, nothing's next. More telling the world about Sactionals. That's what's next. Mm-hmm. I'm still building patents, I'm still inventing things, and I'm not going to go international until I've really locked down the United States. And that's the discipline that I think can make a good company great.
Thank you.
Mm.
Any more?
All right.
Well, great. So I want to, number one, thank Shawn for coming all the way out from Connecticut.
Yeah.
We appreciate that.
Thanks for being here.